Hello. Good morning, good morning, good morning. You open up the closet, they are on that shelf. All right. Good morning. I think this might be the only time we're having reading RTI this week. I'm not 100% sure. So, anyways, we got to get through what we could get through. Eiler just really messes with our little lives. We are on chapter 20, which is page 121. And remember, once again, ran into the lunatic again on the street. Phoebe's like, I'm gonna call the police if I see him again. You know, crazy times. 20 is called The Blackberry Kiss. That night, I tried to write him. Wait for what, Landon? I'm ready to get started. We are on page 121. I already said that. 121, chapter 20. Why don't you have a bookmark where we stop? I shouldn't have to tell people where we are. You should have a bookmark. That night, I tried to write in my mini journal for Mr. Berkway. First, I made a list of things I liked, and they were all things from Bybanks: the trees, the cows, the chickens, the pigs, the fields, the swimming hole. It was a complete jumble of things, and when I tried to write about any one of those things, I ended up writing about my mother because everything was connected to her. At last, I wrote about the blackberry kiss. One morning, when I woke up very early, I saw my mother walking up the hill to the barn. Mist hung about the ground. Finches were singing in the oak tree beside the house, and there was my mother, her pregnant belly sticking out in front of her. She was strolling up the hill, swinging her arms and singing, "Oh, don't fall in love with a sailor boy, a sailor boy, a sailor boy. Oh, don't fall in love with a sailor boy, 'cause he'll take your heart to sea." As she approached the corner of the barn with the sugar maple stand, she plucked a few blackberries from a stray bush and popped them in her mouth. She looked all around her, back of the house, across the fields, and up into the canopy of the branches overhead. She took several quick steps to the trunk of the maple tree, threw her arms around it, and kissed the tree soundly. Later that day, I examined this tree trunk. I tried to wrap my arms about it, but the trunk was much bigger than it had seemed from my window. I looked up to where her mouth must have touched the trunk. I probably imagined this, but I thought I could detect a small dark stain, as from a blackberry kiss. I put my ear against the trunk and listened. I faced the tree squarely and kissed it firmly. To this day, I can smell of the bark, a sweet, woody smell. The feel of the ridges in the bark and the taste of a distinctive taste and taste that distinctive taste on my lips. In my mini journal, I confess that I had since kissed all different kinds of tree and each family of trees. Oaks, maples, elm, birches had all special flavors of their own, mixed in with each tree's own taste with the slight taste of blackberries, and why this is so, I could not explain. So apparently she goes around kissing trees. I don't know why, but more power to you. She loves nature, okay? Next day, I turned this story to Mr. Berkway. He didn't read it or even look at it, but he said, "Marvelous, brilliant," as he slipped it into his briefcase. "I'll put it with the other journals." Phoebe said, "Did he write about me?" Ben said, "Did he write about me?" Mr. Berkway bounded around the room as if the opportunity to teach us was his notion of paradise. He read a poem by E. E. Cummings titled "The Little Horse in the Newly." And the reason why the only capital letters in the title were the Y at the end of Newly is because Mr. Cummings liked to do it that way. He probably never took English, Phoebe said. To me, the Y looked like the Y. To me, the Y looked like the newly born horse standing on its thin legs. The poem was about a newly born horse who doesn't know anything but feels everything. He lives in a smooth, beautifully folded world. I liked that. I was not sure what it was, but I liked it. Everything sounded soft and safe. That day, Phoebe left school early for a dentist appointment. I started walking home alone, but Ben joined me. I was completely unprepared for what happened on the way home and for what would happen later. Ben and I were simply walking along, and he said, "Did you ever read your palm?" "No." "I know how to do it," he said. "Want me to read yours?" He took my hand and stared at it for the longest time. His own hand was soft and warm. Mine was sweating like crazy. He was saying, and tracing the lines of my palm with his finger. It gave me the shivers, but not in an entirely unpleasant way. The sun was beating down on us, and I thought it might be nice to stay there forever with him just running his fingers along my palm like that. I thought about the newly born horse who knows nothing and feels everything. I thought about the smooth, beautifully folded world. Finally, Ben said, "Do you want the good news first or the bad news?" "The bad news." "Is it really bad, is it?" "It isn't really bad, is it?" He coughed. "The bad news is that I can't really read palms." I snatched my hand away. "Don't you want the good news?" he asked. I started walking. "The good news is that you let me hold your hand for almost 5 minutes and you didn't flinch once." I didn't know what to make of him. He walked me all the way to my house, even though I refused to speak to him. He waited on the porch until I was ready to go to Phoebe's, then he walked me to her house. When I knocked on Phoebe's door, Ben said, "I'll be going now." I took a quick look at him and turned back to the door. But in that instant that I was turning my head, he leaned forward, and I do believe his lips kissed my ear. I'm not sure this is what happened. I'm not sure this was what he intended. In fact, I'm not sure it happened at all, because before I knew it, he had hopped down the steps and was walking away. Once again, pretty sure Ben just loves Phoebe, or loves Sal, right? Like, obsessed. But he just held her hand and she didn't flinch. So, there's that. The door inched open, and there was Phoebe's round face, a white and frightened as ever you could imagine. "Quick," she said, "come in." She led me into the kitchen. On the kitchen table was an apple pie, and beside it were 3 envelopes. One for Phoebe, one for Prudence, and one for her father. I opened my note, Phoebe said, showing it to me. It said, "Keep all the doors locked and call your father if you need anything. I love you, Phoebe." It was signed, Mom. I didn't think too much of it. "Phoebe," I said, I know. It doesn't sound terrible or anything. In fact, my first thought was, well, good. She knows I'm old enough to be here by myself. I figured she was out shopping, or maybe even decided to return to work, even though she wasn't supposed to go back to Rocky Rubbers until next week. But then Prudence came home and opened her note. Phoebe showed me the note left for Prudence. It said, "Please heat the spaghetti sauce and boil the spaghetti. Love you, Prudence." It was signed, Mom. I still didn't think too much of it, but Phoebe was suspicious. Prudence made the spaghetti while I helped Phoebe set the table. Phoebe and I even made a salad. "I do feel sort of independent," Phoebe said. When Phoebe's father came home, Phoebe showed him his note. He opened it and sat down, staring at the piece of paper. Phoebe looked over his shoulder and read his note aloud. "I had to go away. I can't explain. I'll call you in a few days." I had a sinking feeling. All right, so Sal's mom, MIA, we don't know what truly has happened to her. And now Phoebe's mom apparently has left. And she left 3 very vague notes. Do we know where she's been? No. Do we know why she went? No. But we do know from earlier in the story that Phoebe's mom never seems very happy, right? She seems very, unsettled with her life. Prudence started asking a million questions. What does she mean? Go away where? Why can't she explain? Why didn't she tell you? Did she mention this? A few days? Where did she go? Maybe we should call the police, Phoebe said. I think she was kidnapped or something. Oh, Phoebe, Mr. Winterbottom said. I'm serious, she said. Maybe a lunatic came in the house and dragged her off. Phoebe, that is not funny. I'm not being funny. I mean, it could happen. Prudence was still asking her questions. Where did she go? Why didn't she mention this? Didn't she tell you? Where did she go? Prudence. I honestly cannot say, her father said. I think we should call the police, Phoebe repeated. Phoebe, if she was kidnapped, would the lunatic, as you say, allow her to sit down and write these notes? He stood up, removed his coat, and said, let's eat. As I left, Phoebe said, my mother has disappeared. Sal, don't tell anyone. Don't tell a soul. At home, my father was slumped over in the photo album. He used to close the album quickly when I came in the room, as if he was embarrassed to be caught with it. Lately, however, he didn't bother to close it. It was as if he didn't have the strength to do that. On the open page was a photo of my father and mother sitting in the grass beneath the sugar maple. His arms were around her, and she was sort of folded into him. His face was pressed next to hers, and their hair blended together. They looked like they were connected. Phoebe's mother went away, I said. He looked at me. She left some notes. She says she's coming back, but I don't believe it. So, obviously, Sal probably has trust issues when people say they're going to come back because her mother herself said that she was coming back before the tulips bloomed, and what happened? Her mother never came back. So, obviously, Sal probably doesn't believe people very often. I went upstairs and tried to work on my mythology report. My father came in the doorway and said, people usually come back. Now I can see that he was just talking in general, just trying to be comforting. And then that night, what I heard in what he said was the tiniest reassurance of something I had been thinking and hoping. I had been praying that a miracle would happen and my mother would come back and we would return to Bybanks and everything would be exactly as it used to be. Wishful thinking for sure. We are now on chapter 21, Souls. At school the next day, Phoebe wore a fixed expression, a sealed, thin smile. It must have been hard for her to maintain that smile because by the time English class came around, her chin was quivering from the strain. She was extremely quiet all day. She didn't speak to anyone but me, and the only thing she said to me was, stay at my house tomorrow night. It wasn't a question, it was a command. Mr. Berkway gave us a 15-second exercise. As fast as we could, without thinking, we were to draw something. He would tell us what we were to draw when everyone was ready. Remember, he said, don't think, just draw. 15 seconds. Ready? Draw your soul. Go. We all wasted 5 seconds staring blankly back at him. When we saw that he was serious and was watching the clock, our pencils hit the paper. I wasn't thinking. There wasn't time to think. When Mr. Berkway called stop, everyone looked up dazed. When we looked down at our papers, and a buzz went around the room, we were surprised at what had come out of our pencils. Mr. Berkway zipped around, scooping up the papers. He shuffled them and tacked them on the bulletin board. He said, we now have everyone's soul captured. We all crowded around. At first I noticed was that every single person had drawn a central shape, heart, a circle, square, triangle. I thought that was unusual. I mean, no one drew a bus or a spaceship or a cow. They all drew these same shapes. Next, I noticed that inside each figure was a distinct design. At first, it seemed that everyone's was different. There was a cross, a dark scribble, an eye, a mouth, a window. There was one with a teardrop inside that I thought must be Phoebe's. Then Mary Lou said, look at that. Two are exactly the same. People were saying, geez, and wow, whose are those? The duplicate designs were a circle with a large maple leaf in the center and the tips of the leaf touching the sides of the circle. One of the maple leaf circles was mine. The other's was Ben's. Oh, ho, ho, coincidental. They drew their souls, like what came out of their, mind in 15 seconds. And coincidentally, Sal's and Ben's matched. What does that mean? I don't know. But theirs matched and no one else's did. Traditionally, back in the day when we would read this, I would have you guys do that own thing. But you guys aren't with me and I don't have paper and all of that to you. But, time out. Sorry, time out. Mr. John emailed me. Hello, sorry. No, we do not have a ReadWorks this week. Anyways, others was Ben. Dun, 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 dun. 22 is evidence. How could they copy? They were all sitting at their own desk. And if you only have 15 seconds, I don't think you would have time to look at someone else's paper and draw exactly what they said if you only had 15 seconds. I spent the next night at Phoebe's house, but I could hardly sleep. Phoebe kept saying, "Hear that noise?" and she would jump up to peer out the window in case it was a lunatic returning for the rest of us. Once she saw Mrs. Cadaver in her garden with a flashlight. I must have fallen asleep after that, because I woke up with the sound of Phoebe crying in her sleep. When I woke her up, she denied it. I was not crying. I most certainly was not. In the morning, Phoebe refused to get up. Her father rushed into the room with 2 ties swung around his neck and his shoes in his hand. "Phoebe, you're late." "I'm sick," she said. "I have a fever and a stomach ache." Her father placed her hand on her forehead, took a deep look in her eyes, and said, "I'm afraid you have to go to school. I'm sick. Honest," she said. "It might be cancer." "Phoebe, I know you're worried, but there's nothing to do but wait. We have to go on with things. You cannot malinger." "We can't what?" Phoebe said. "Malinger. Here, look it up." He tossed her a dictionary from her desk and tore down the hall. "My father is missing, and my father hands me a dictionary," Phoebe said. She looked up malinger and read the definition. "To pretend to be ill in order to escape duty or work." She slammed the book shut. "I am not malingering." Some of you guys definitely like to try to malinger. Malinger means you pretend to be sick in order not to do something. So I'm sure all of you have probably done that in your life. Some of you definitely do it more than others. Dun, 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 dun. That's a good word. Mrs. Knifel's going to start using that. Phoebe was in a frenzy. "Where is my white blouse? Phoebe, have you seen it? I could have sworn." She pulled things out of her closet and flung them on her bed. Phoebe reluctantly got dressed and pulled a wrinkled blouse and skirt from the closet. Downstairs, the kitchen table was bare. No bowls of mulesis, Phoebe said. No glass of orange juice or whole wheat toast. She touched a white sweater hanging on the back of the chair. "My mom's favorite white cardigan," she said. She snatched the sweater and waved it in front of her father. "Look at this. Would she leave this behind? Would she?" He reached forward and touched its sleeve, rubbing the fabric between his fingers for a moment. "Phoebe, it's an old sweater." Phoebe put it on over her wrinkled blouse. It wasn't easy because everything that happened at Phoebe's that morning reminded me of when my mother left. For weeks, my father and I fumbled around like ducks in a fit. Nothing was where it was supposed to be. The house took on a life of its own, hitching piles of dishes and laundry and newspaper and dust. My father must have said, "I'll be jiggled" 3,000 times. The chickens were fidgety, the cows were skittish, the pigs were solemn and glum. Our dog, Moody Blue, whimpered for hours on end. So basically, this probably happens in your own life when mom's gone or grandma or whoever you live with is gone or busy or something. Everything kind of just gets jumbled around. Like if my poor husband had to live without me, he would know where nothing is, So that's just the natural things in life. Your mom or whoever you live with, grandma, or even if you just live with dad, who's ever in charge of your house kind of keeps things running. And if that person had to go away for a little bit, oh snap, things kind of just go a little bit frenzied. So that's what's happening to Phoebe's home. It's only the first morning and everyone her dad's already running late. There's no breakfast, Oh snap, things are a mess. When my father said that my mother was not coming back, I refused to believe it. I brought all her postcards down from my room and said, "She wrote me all of these. She must be coming back." And just like Phoebe, who had waved her mother's sweater in front of her father, I had brought a chicken in from the coop. Would mom leave her favorite chicken? I demanded. "She loves this chicken." What I mentally went was, how can she not come back to me? She loves me. At school, Phoebe slammed her books on the desk. Beth Ann said, "Hey, Phoebe, your blouse is a little wrinkled." "My mother's away," Phoebe said. "I iron my own clothes now," Beth Ann said. "I even iron." To me, Phoebe whispered, "I think I'm having a genuine heart attack." She's not. I thought about a baby rabbit that our dog Moody Blue caught and carried around. She was not actually lunching on the rabbit, just playing. I finally coaxed Moody Blue to drop it. When I picked up the rabbit, its heart was beating faster than anything. Faster and faster it went. Then all of a sudden, its heart stopped. I took the rabbit to my mother. She said, "It's dead, Salamonica." "It can't be dead," I said. "It was alive just a minute ago." I wonder what happened if all of a sudden Phoebe's heart beat itself out like the rabbit's, and she fell down and died right here at school. Her mother would not even know Phoebe was dead. After homeroom, Mary Lou said to Phoebe, "Did I hear your mother is away?" Christy and Megan gathered around. "Is your mother on a business trip?" Christy said. "My mother's going to Paris on a business trip. So where is your mother? On a business trip?" Phoebe nodded. Where did she go? Megan said. Tokyo? Saudi Arabia? Phoebe said, London. Oh, London, Christy said. My mother's been there. Phoebe turned to me with a puzzled expression on her face. I think she was surprised at what she had said, but I knew exactly why she had lied. It was easier sometimes. I had done this myself when people asked about my mother. Don't worry, Phoebe, I said. She snapped. I am not worried. I had done that too. Whenever anyone tried to console me about my mother, I had nearly chomped their heads off. I was complete ornery old donkey. And my father would say, You must feel terrible. I denied it. I don't, I told him. I don't feel anything at all. But I did feel terrible. I didn't want to wake up in the morning. And I was afraid to go to sleep at night. By lunchtime, people were coming at Phoebe from all directions. How long will your mother be in London? Mary Lou asked. Is she having tea with the Queen? Tell her to go to Convent Gardens, Christy said. My mother just loves Convent Gardens. It's Covent Gardens, Cabbage Head, Mary Lou said. It isn't, Christy said. I'm sure it's Convent Garden. After school, we walked home with Ben and Mary Lou. Phoebe wouldn't say a word. What's the matter, Phoebe? Ben asked. Talk. Out of the blue, I said, everyone has his own agenda. Ben tripped over the curb and Mary Lou gave me a peculiar look. I kept hoping that Phoebe's mother would be home. Even though the door was locked, I kept hoping. Are you sure you want me to come in? I asked. Maybe you want to be alone. Phoebe said, I don't want to be alone. Call your dad and see if he can stay for dinner again. Inside, Phoebe called, Mom. She walked through the house looking in each room. That's it, Phoebe said. I'm going to search for clues, for evidence that the lunatic has been here and dragged my mother off. I wanted to tell her that she was just fishing in the air and that probably her mom had not been kidnapped, but I knew that Phoebe didn't want to hear it. When my mother did not return, I imagined all sorts of things. Maybe she had cancer and didn't want to tell us and was hiding in Idaho. Maybe she got knocked in the head and had amnesia and was wandering around Lewiston, not knowing who she was or thinking she was someone else. My father said, she does not have cancer, Sal. She does not have amnesia. Those are fishes in the air. But I didn't believe him. Maybe he was trying to protect her or me. Phoebe prowled through the house, examining the walls, carpet, searching for blood stains. She found several suspicious spots and unidentified hair strands. Phoebe marked the spots with pieces of adhesive tape and collected the hairs in an envelope. Prudence had a lather when she came home. I made it, she said. I made it. She was jumping about. I made cheerleading. When Phoebe reminded her that her mother had been kidnapped, Prudence said, Oh, Phoebe, mother wasn't kidnapped. Mom wasn't kidnapped. She started jumping and looked around the kitchen. So what are we supposed to have for dinner? Phoebe rummaged around the cupboards. Prudence opened the freezer compartment and said, Look at this. For a terrible moment, I thought she found a chopped up body parts in there. Maybe, just maybe, Phoebe was right. Maybe the lunatic had done away with her mother. I couldn't look. I could hear Prudence moving things around the freezer. At least she wasn't screaming. There was no body parts in the freezer. Instead, stacked neatly were plastic containers, each with a note attached. Brock Len Cass, 3:50, 1 hour. Prudence read, Mac T, 3:25, 45 minutes, and on and on and on. What's Brock Len Cass? I said. Phoebe pried open the lid. Inside was green and yellow hearted mass. Broccoli and lentil casserole, she said. When their father came home and was surprised to see dinner on the table, Prudence showed him the freezer contents. He said. At dinner, we all ate quietly. I don't suppose you heard anything from Mom, Prudence asked her father. Not yet, he said. I think we should call the police, Phoebe said. Phoebe. I'm serious. I found some suspicious spots. Phoebe pointed towards two adhesive areas beneath the dining table. What's tape doing down there, he asked. Phoebe explained about the potential blood spot. Blood, Prudence said. She stopped eating. Phoebe pulled the envelope and emptied the hair strands on the table. Strange hairs, Phoebe examined. Prudence said, Ugh. Mr. Winterbottom tapped his fork against his knife. Then he stood up and took Phoebe's arms and said, Follow me. He went to the refrigerator and opened the freezer compartment and indicated the plastic containers. If your mother had been kidnapped by a lunatic, would she have had time to prepare all these meals? Would she have been able to say, Excuse me, Mr. Lunatic, while I prepare 10 or 20 meals for my family to eat while I am kidnapped? Obviously, that's a no. You don't care, Phoebe said. Nobody cares. Everyone has his own idiot agenda. They left shortly after dinner. Mr. Winterbottom was in his studies, phoning his wife's friends to see if they had any idea on where she might have gone. At least, Phoebe had said to me, he's doing something, but I still think we should call the police. As I left Phoebe's, a dead leaf, crackly voice of Margaret Cadaver called me from her house next door. Sal, do you want to come in? Your father's here. We're having dessert. Join us. My father appeared behind her. Come on, Sal, he said. Don't be a goose. I'm not a goose, I said. I already had dessert. I'm on my way home to finish my English report. My father turned to Margaret. I better go with her. Sorry. Margaret didn't say anything. She just stood there as my father retrieved his jacket and joined me. I knew it was mean, but I felt as if I had won a little victory over Margaret Cadaver. On the way home, when Dad asked if Phoebe's mother had come back yet, I said no. Phoebe thinks a lunatic has carried her off. A lunatic? Isn't that a bit far-fetched? That's what I thought at first, but you never know, do you? I mean, it could happen. There could actually be a lunatic who... Sal? I was going to explain about the nervous young man and the mysterious messages, but my father would call me a goose. Instead, I said, how do you know that someone, not exactly a lunatic, but someone didn't make Mom go to Idaho? Maybe it was blackmail. Sal, your mother went because she wanted to go. We should have stopped her. A person isn't a bird. You can't cage a person. She shouldn't have gone. If she hadn't gone, Sal, I'm sure she intended to come back. We had reached our house, but we didn't go in. We sat on our porch steps. Dad said, you can't predict. A person can't foresee. You never know. He looked away, and I felt miserable right along with him. I apologized for being Andre and for upsetting him. He put his arm around me, and we sat there together on the porch, two people being completely pitiful and lost. Sorry. Oh, my goodness. Sorry. So, even though Sal's mother has been gone for a very long time, they're still pitiful and lost. So, they lost their person, the mom, and they still are totally lost. So, Phoebe's mom just is gone, and they're lost now. But it's just going to continue on. All right, we are out of time. We shall stop there. I will see you all in reading class